no one wanted to make Rango, but it ended up birthing an entire studio. Rango turns 15 years old this month, so here are some things I bet you never knew about it. The story behind Rango starts with breakfast and pirates. You see, while director Gore Verbinski got his start making music videos, and then staked his claim on movies like The Ring and The Mexican, he had always dreamed of making an animated film. And luckily, when he went to work on the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Verbinski suddenly found himself getting a lot of experience with computer-generated effects, working with Industrial Light and Magic, the best VFX house in the biz. And as he told Animated Views in 2012, animation was calling. He said it was time to take what we had learned and try to go for a completely animated film. So Verbinski thought back to a breakfast meeting he'd had a few years prior with children's author and illustrator David Shannon and Little Bear producer John Carls, where they came up with the basic idea for a Western cartoon about animals in the desert. So in the mid-2000s, Verbinski invited writer John Logan to help outline a script, and he brought on Shannon, ILM VFX wizard Crash McCreary, storyboard artist Jim Burkett, and painter Eugene Yelchin to help design the characters. Verbinski thought this process would be easy and that maybe he'd be able to make Rango and another live-action film at the same time. He thought wrong. The small team of writers and designers worked for 18 months developing and designing the story. They got indie producer Graham King to float them about $4 million in seed money, but they kept things very bare bones. Quote, "We wanted to reduce our overhead, so we just worked out of the house, cooking hot dogs and barbecue. We were working for about a year and a half, drawing, putting it all into a Mac computer, getting a microphone, doing all the voices, creating." Basically, Verbinski and this skeleton crew turned black and white sketches into a rough animatic with temporary dialogue. Burkett voiced Rango, and Verbinski played a female character by digitally tuning up his voice. By 2007, they had a 12-page outline, they had a test reel, and a portfolio of designs for the film. Verbinski had just wrapped up his third and final Pirates movie, and so he approached Johnny Depp about playing the lead role in the potential animated movie. He told the actor, "It's a Western with this lizard suffering an identity crisis." And Johnny Depp immediately agreed to it without even seeing a script. Depp's involvement was ultimately crucial to getting the movie made. Verbinski then pitched the movie to ILM visual effects supervisor John Knoll and the company's animation director Hal Hickel. Verbinski proposed that ILM should make this their very first fully animated feature film. Knoll and Hickel were skeptical, but they agreed to watch the test reel. Ultimately, they were swayed by one quote from Verbinski. He said, "There's Pixar and then there's everybody imitating Pixar. I don't want to follow in their footsteps." Around this time, ILM had done some motion capture test footage for James Cameron and Avatar, but the company decided to do Rango instead of Avatar because it had a strong relationship with Verbinski post-Pirates, and it saw Rango as a less risky project. With the animators now on board, they then had to find a studio to fund the project, because they'd need about 30 times more money than what Graham King had seeded them. Writer John Logan explained that Rango almost died right then and there, telling The Hollywood Reporter in 2012, "That was a scary moment when no one wanted to finance it." But then, they pitched it to Paramount Pictures and its CEO at the time, Brad Gray. Verbinski called it one of the weirdest pitch moments ever. Quote, "Brad Gray drove out to the house in Pasadena and wandered through the stale pizza crusts and coffee cups and into the laundry room that was converted into an edit bay. And he was like, 'Where am I? A college dorm? What the fuck is this?' And then we showed him the story reel and we had Johnny Depp committed and he said, 'Let's do it.' Paramount agreed to fund the project and the budget eventually came in at $135 million. A little bit about the writing process. The movie is obviously very inspired by classic westerns. When they were developing the film, the team at Verbinski's house watched John Ford and Sam Peckinpah films. They watched Howl's Moving Castle, Bob Hope's Son of Paleface, Don Knotts' The Shakiest Gun in the West, and Sergio Leone's spaghetti western starring Clint Eastwood. The movie itself references The Shakiest Gun, A Fistful of Dollars, Chinatown, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Once Upon a Time in the West, Cat Ballou, Raising Arizona, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Johnny Depp's Rango crashes into Johnny Depp's Raoul Duke in the movie. Oh, and also, Timothy Olyphant voices the Spirit of the West, who sounds and looks a lot like Clint Eastwood. To get into the character as Eastwood, Olyphant would say, "Welcome to hell, asshole," before every take. From its initial development to writing to production, everything about Rango was unconventional. Verbinski called the writing a challenge, saying, "It's not easy at all. We wrote the first scene with Rango in the terrarium 30 times. Logan called it a madcap endeavor and said, "We never talked about it as a kids movie. If you looked between the lines, there are drug references and guns and a fair amount of violence. There's this counterculture, provocative sensibility that made the studio nervous. When we needed an action sequence, I said, 'A bat attack, gophers riding on bats.'" Then they assembled the rest of the cast. Isla Fisher, Abigail Breslin, Ned Beatty, Alfred Molina, Bill Nighy, and Harry Dean Stanton. Stephen Root played 3 roles in the film: Doc the Hare, the Squirrel Banker, and Mr. Snuggles the Porcupine. 2009. But maybe the way Rango was made was the most unusual thing of all. Verbinski gathered the actors for a breakneck 20-day live-action shoot on a Universal soundstage. The idea was that they'd shoot the entire film with the actors on digital cameras, and then ILM would use those performances as a reference for the animation. Verbinski set up the space with a swinging saloon door and a few paltry props. Quote, "Here's your stupid hat and your rubber gun in this carpeted area, like some bizarre rehearsal for a school play, and we're recording you, and you have to do 10 pages a day." Live-action films typically shoot 2 pages a day on average, so this was fast and the material was dense for the actors. The director went on movies, actors do one line as the train blows up in the background and then they go back to their trailer. By the end of this shoot, every actor was like, "Oh shit, I remember acting." And quote, "Nobody was happy for those 20 days. Ned Beatty had just voiced Lotso in Toy Story 3, and he said this process was the exact opposite of Pixar. At Pixar, they refused to let him improvise, but on Rango, it was anything goes. He recalled that Verbinski didn't even give the actors the full script. On one of the shoot days, Johnny Depp had to do a multi-page monologue and he could not get through it. Beatty told The Hollywood Reporter, "Johnny went off. He said, 'I can't do this.'" But the cast and the director finished that shoot, and then in 2009, ILM turned their performances into animation. Verbinski would travel to ILM's offices in the Bay Area every other week, and when he wasn't there, he'd video conference with them for 6 hours a day. The director was very hands-on. ILM supervisor John Knoll recalled how Gore would say, "The clock tower is hidden, push that building back 3 feet, and make the road 6 feet wider." It played to his strengths with walking live-action sets. Verbinski also brought on legendary cinematographer Roger Deakins to consult on the visual style of the film and help them emulate classic Leone movies and modern masterpieces like There Will Be Blood. They even recreated lens defects like chromatic aberration and barrel distortion. Verbinski then brought on his Pirates collaborator Hans Zimmer to score the movie. Rango did hit a couple of snags late in its post-production process. In early 2010, after Avatar became a 3D worldwide smash, Paramount proposed converting Rango into 3D. They tested it out on a couple scenes, and Verbinski said it looked beautiful, but it would have cost an extra $22 million, so Paramount ultimately changed its mind. And then there was a ratings controversy. The Motion Picture Association rated the movie PG, but when the anti-smoking organization Breathe California saw the film, they were furious that it had 60 instances of smoking depicted on screen. The org called it a public health hazard and demanded the movie be rated R. But the MPA did not budge, and it stayed a PG movie. Rango had its world premiere on February 14th, 2011 at the Village Theater in LA. It then opened on 3,917 screens on March 4th, grossing $38 million domestic opening weekend, landing at number 1. It then remained in the top 10 for 5 weeks total, ultimately grossing $246 million worldwide, against its $135 million budget. And then it grossed at least another $35 million on home video, according to available information. So while it did not double its budget in theaters, Paramount deemed it a success. So much so that after Rango came out, the studio decided to open up an animation branch. Paramount Animation was founded in 2011, all because of Rango. Critics really liked Rango. Today, 88% of the 222 reviews assessed by Rotten Tomatoes are positive. But interestingly, audiences gave it a C+ cinema score in theater exit polls. Maybe those families who saw it were a bit confused or put off by its weirder elements. That said, Rango won multiple awards, taking home Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, Annies, and BAFTAs. EA released a Rango video game alongside the film, but interestingly, it actually serves as a sequel to the main story. For about a decade, ILM stayed away from making any more animated features. But then in 2024 and 2025, it provided the animation for Netflix's Ultraman Rising and then Paramount's Transformers 1, respectively. You'd think that Paramount would have wanted to make a sequel to Rango, but it seems it never seriously explored it as far as we know. In a 2017 Reddit AMA, Gore Verbinski said he wasn't interested in a sequel, but that he hoped one day to be involved with another original animated film. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you've made it to the end, drop a webbed phalanges in the comments. For more movie histories, check out the attached playlist and subscribe to my newsletter for the latest movie news.